Hello everyone, welcome back to What the Horror. I hope you're all doing really well. If you're new here and you like horror and you like movies, don't forget to click that subscribe button as I am here for you with movie reviews, rankings, comparisons and deep dives. In today's episode we're talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer, released in 1997, starring Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Freddie Prinze Jr. and Ryan Phillippe. Just a heads up that today's episode will include spoilers for the film, so if you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend you go and watch it first and then come back to the episode. But I'm sure that most people have seen this film at this point, but just in case you haven't, then consider it your spoiler warning. In the wake of Scream, released in 1996, there were lots of knockoff and imitation films released trying to cash in on the same level of success, films like Cherry Falls, The Faculty, Urban Legend, Valentine, but I think that I Know What You Did Last Summer is definitely one of the stronger installments in the slasher subgenre. This could be partly due to the fact that Scream's screenplay writer Kevin Williamson also wrote the screenplay for I Know What You Did Last Summer. So Williamson had actually penned the screenplay for I Know What You Did Last Summer several years before the film was made, and then it was rushed into production after the success of Scream. The screenplay is loosely based on the 1973 novel of the same name, written by Lois Duncan. But while Duncan's book is more of a suspense story, Williamson made changes to it so that it was more like a 1980s slasher film. So Lois Duncan is well known for being highly critical of the film version of her book. In a 2002 interview, she described herself as appalled by the movie version and the fact that her story had been turned into a slasher horror film. I Know What You Did Last Summer spawned 2 sequels, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, released in 1998, and I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, released in 2006. Now that sequel doesn't have any of the returning cast members, and it has very little connection to the original 2 films outside of the very basic premise and the villain. It has also spawned a TV show that was released on Amazon Prime earlier this year in October. So I recently rewatched I Know What You Did Last Summer for this review. I wanted to watch and review the TV series for you guys, but I thought it would be a good idea or a nice idea to review the original film first. I did also rewatch the 2 sequels, but I will not be doing standalone reviews for those 2 installments, but I am doing a franchise ranking video where I'll rank everything in the franchise, and I will talk about my thoughts on those films in that video, and I will also touch upon them in my November Letterboxd recap. So let's get the review started and look at some of the positives of the film. So first of all, I think they did a phenomenal job casting the 4 main leads. Jennifer Love Hewitt does a great job with final girl Julie. She brings a level of likeable innocence, but when she's just finished with The Fisherman's Torment, when she's had enough, I did buy her character's sudden shift and the level of fieriness that she develops. And I thought that Sarah Michelle Gellar was perfect as Helen. She does a good job of balancing being the popular girl, but also she's not an unlikable person. She's not a bad person. You can believe, why Helen and Julie would be friends. And I read that Barry was originally going to be cast as a tall, broad person because, he's meant to be the jock character. And although Ryan Phillippe is of a smaller build, I think that he does a good job of being, maybe slightly intimidating at times. His level of anger that he portrays, I think he does a really good job of being the jock guy. I think that the fact that these characters are played so well and the fact that they're so fully fleshed out really helps the audience invest in them, and I think the film makes the right decision in allowing the audience to get to know them and grow to care for them before any bodies start being picked off. And even though these teens made really bad decisions and they brought this situation on themselves, I still think there is a level of sympathy that you can feel for them. They made bad choices, they made bad decisions, but they are now paying for it. These characters don't continue with their lives as though nothing happened. They may not have been technically caught, but they certainly didn't get away with it. Any potential future that these characters had has now been ruined. Julie is failing at college, and Helen failed with her attempt to be an actress and is now back in town. Ray failed in New York and is now back where he started, and Barry is portrayed as being over-reliant on drink and exercise. So Barry is certainly the least likeable out of the 4 leads, but even he is redeemed by the end of the film. So another positive for me is both the setting and the musical score. I think that the score does a really good job of creating a level of suspense, especially with the addition of the sound from the necklace, and it begins to signify that the fisherman is nearby, but he's unseen. He's in the shadows. But I think what the score does even more successfully is add on to that level of sympathy for the characters that I mentioned earlier. I absolutely love the small fishing town setting of I Know What You Did Last Summer. I am probably slightly biased because I love any horror films that are set in, on, or around, or near water. But I do love that so many aspects and details of the film are tied in just because of the setting. Little things like Helen's iconic beauty pageant crown. It's decorated with seaweed and seahorses and shells, but also the killer's image and weapon ties in with it, and even the Final Girl circuit is set on a boat rather than a house or the woods. So speaking of the Final Girl circuit, I'm not afraid to admit that I am generally pretty bored by third acts and Final Girl circuits. You know, you're usually just following some woman who's probably going to survive, running through a house, running through the woods, screaming every time she finds a body. But this film it has quite a strong third act. I think that the chase scene's good, the reveal of information is good, and the fact that in the Final Girl circuit they utilise all the different aspects of the boat setting, it makes for an interesting and refreshing-ish watch. Another aspect that I love about I Know What You Did Last Summer is the fact that this killer, the fisherman, he messes with his victims psychologically first, wearing them down, making them afraid. And I think that it helps make it more tragic when they do actually start dying. There's quite a while where these 14s, they're not fully aware of the extent that the fisherman will go to, and so they are very determined to fight their way out of this situation. So my final positive that I want to talk about is the accident scene itself. In my opinion, I think that it's one of the most iconic scenes in a slasher film. The image of these 14s just stood scared in the road, desperately trying to figure out what to do next after hitting a man with their car, and just arguing among themselves amongst the shadowy mountainside. Cinematography wise, this is a beautifully shot scene. The sky and everything past the road barrier is in complete darkness. The only thing that is illuminated are the 14s, the body, and the small section of road that they're on, and they're only lit by the moonlight, 2 torches, and the headlights of Barry's car. So everything else, like I say, is either in shadow or pitch black, and I think that it's a great visual, but it's almost like there's something more to it. The small section of road that they're stood in is illuminated, and that is them in this moment right now. That is all they can see. And then everything past the road is pitch black, and that's representing the future and the unknown as what is going to happen to them after this event. So what's also done really well in this scene, in my opinion, is how each of the characters are written, how each of the characters respond to the situation that they're in. Each teen acts in line with their character traits. So for example, Julie, the moral compass of the film, she wants to call an ambulance or call the police. Helen, who wants to be an actress, just wants to pretend that they were never there. Barry, the trust fund child who is probably used to getting his own way because of his parents' money, just wants to remove the problem and make it go away. And Ray, who is poorer than the other 3, acts out of fear that his family won't be able to help him in this situation, won't be able to provide legal help. So firstly, the red herrings. This film has so many. It is pointing the finger at so many different people, left, right and centre. I understand that they want to add an element of mystery to it and a level of mistrust between the group of friends, but I think that they just go about it in the wrong way. In Scream, you did also have a long list of suspects, but what they did well there was that the list grew smaller and smaller as the teens were eventually killed off. So in I Know What You Did Last Summer, you have David Egan, kind of, Missy Egan, Max, Elsa, Helen's sister, Ray's alias Billy Blue, and Ray himself. And these suspects are only eliminated when the killer's actual identity is revealed at the end of the film. And I think that the Ray red herring is the worst offender of them. Now, perhaps on initial viewing, it worked well. I mean, I don't know. It's been so long since I watched the film that I honestly can't remember if it worked well or not. But on subsequent viewings, it's just odd. I mean, once you know that Ray isn't the killer, then why is he acting so shifty and aloof? And considering that his friends, including the girl that he wants back, are being targeted by a dangerous person, why does he not care more? Why does he not get more involved to help? And why does the fisherman not seem to care about Ray? Now, I noticed this when I rewatched I Still Know What You Did Last Summer as well, and that is that the fisherman seems to target Julie and not care about Ray. And to me, that's just bizarre. Now, Julie's the one that wanted to help. She wanted to call the police or the ambulance, while Ray was backing Barry's idea of disposing of the body all the way. And yet he always seems to come out of these films completely unscathed. Another negative for me is just a small one, but it's one that has bugged the heck out of me ever since I first saw it. And that is when Helen's in the beauty pageant and she stands up and is screaming for help and is running desperately to try and help Barry in the balcony. Why do the townspeople stand up, block her path, and all start grabbing and pawing at her? It's just strange. I think objectively as well, the killer reveal could be considered a negative. I think that there just aren't enough clues through the film for the audience to try and figure out who he is. I mean, Ben Willis isn't mentioned throughout the film until the very end when Julie reads an article on the internet, but this is mere minutes before the killer's identity is revealed anyway. But at least it does make sense in relation to the setting of the film and relation to the story of the film. Yeah, I'm looking at you. I'll always know what you did last summer. Okay, so that is I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, this film was actually one of the first, if not the first, slasher films that I watched when I was younger. And alongside Scream and Psycho, they are three of my favourite horror films of all time. But I have watched better horror films throughout the years, but because of nostalgia, these three will always be my favourites. They will always be the ones I go to for comfort and for rewatchability. But I would love to know your opinions on this 90s gem. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to look out for my review on the TV series and the ranking of the franchise. Thank you for stopping by and listening to this Horror Fan's Thoughts and Opinions. I appreciate each and every one of you. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye, guys. But I think that I Know What You Did Last Summer is definitely one of the stronger installments in the slasher subgenre. Try to say slasher subgenre 3 times, I dare you.